NRL Offside. We are back, JC, live and loud. Thank you for joining this week's show to all of our listeners. As always, we're very, very excited to be here, guys. But Johnny, mate, you and I need to talk about a few things. We had lots of feedback last week. A lot of that feedback was around your contention that Brett Finch and Brad Fittler were the best halves combo for the decade, for 2000 to 2010. Now, mate, that was bad enough. But, mate, I realised we really had a problem in the What Caught Your Eye segment. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but you described something as being super great. So I want the listeners just to remember those words, super great. Mate, then you proceeded to talk about Nafahu White's post-contact meters. Now, mate, I'm a big fan of White. He's a very impressive young player, but, mate, super great. I mean, it's hardly Brett Kenny's try in the 85 Challenge Cup final. After that, it became bleedingly obvious to me that we need a Roosters intervention with you. Now, I've taken a few of the 12 steps for addiction recovery, and, mate, we're going to start to actually apply them from this week's show. Now, the first step taking this journey, mate, is admitting that you have no control over it. You've pretty much been doing that one way or another since our introduction. It's been glaringly obvious. The second step is admitting to past mistakes, and we probably need to go no further than Finch and Fittler. But the third all-important step, mate, is learning to make amends. So this is really what's going to get us to where we want to be. And with that in mind, mate, with today's show, you are not allowed to mention the word Roosters at all. So,
wow.
Mate, from this point, I'm drawing a line in the sand. You are banned. Mate, you're banned from using the R word today. Now, mate, this hurts me as much as it does you, but I'm only doing it for your own good, Johnny. I can't let you spiral out of control anymore, mate. So how's that? Are you okay with that?
Whoa, geez, Captain Noz, mate, talk about an ambush. I thought we're doing a podcast together, mate. This feels like a rehab meeting, to be honest, mate. And look, I think maybe from now on, I'm going to have to start calling you Councillor Noz. So that's going to be your new name instead of Captain Noz. Before I forget, as I always do to start our podcast, hello to our listeners. And Noz, I've got to ask you, mate, on these 12 ridiculous steps that you just mentioned, what's step 4? Hang on, let me guess. You want me to hand over my 2002, 2013, 18, and 19 Premiership jersey collections, mate? You got to come back to that.
Maybe just handing back those jerseys where the Roosters, mate, fell outside their normal salary cap buffer of 400% more than every other team. Mate, it's probably 2019. So the Roosters spent an estimated $51 million against a salary cap of 9.6 mil. So we might send someone over a little bit later to pick up your 2019 jersey, mate.
Mate, you're too funny, Noz, and you're banning me from saying the R word all episode, mate. That's pretty harsh, mate, to be honest. It sort of reminds me a little bit of, you remember Kevin Walters during that Origin period when he was coaching Queensland, and he had that horse whisperer bloke telling him and the team not to say New South Wales or Blues in the lead up to the games. And I think he was saying just refer to the opposition as the other team. You know what? I'm actually going to do something similar in today's show. I won't say the R word. Every time I want to, I'm going to say something like James Tedesco and friends. Okay? All right. Anyway, enough about my rehab program, mate. Let's get cracking into today's show. Over to you.
Yeah, but I just realised when you said you're going to refer to the Roosters as James Tedesco and friends, we've probably just made the show longer. So maybe that's going to backfire spectacularly. Now, on to the show. Speed rounds, no R-word interjections this week, JC. That's as part of your recovery, so just bear that in mind.
Yep.
What caught your eye?
Right.
We've got a hot wing tear this week, which should be very exciting for our listeners. The grapple, as everybody is likely aware, we are heading into one of the best weekends in the entire NRL schedule, a phenomenon that is Magic Rounds. Round preview. We were a lot better with our tips last week, JC, but it could be anything.
Agree.
Again, reversion to the mean. We had a good week last week. We might have a terrible week this week. And freeballing is my segment this week. As always, I'll be taking it a little bit left of centre, and we're going to be talking about the classic no yes players. That is, those mercurial footballers who have made our Sunday afternoons worthwhile over probably the last 120 years. But as we always do, Johnny, we are going to start with our patented speed round. Okay, Dolphins versus Bulldogs. I'm going to channel my inner Johnny Mercer and accentuate the positive here, JC. After a slow start, the Finns were great, showing their attacking firepower with some extraordinary tries, headlined by Jermaine Asako's acrobatics and Isaiah Katoa's incredible pass to set up Cody Nikorima's four-pointer. But we can't completely eliminate the negative. The Dogs, after a strong start, well, they faded horribly yet again, headlined by Connor Tracy, whose inept last-line defence made him resemble a Dr. Evil henchman. Roosters versus Titans. Now, there is a temptation here, Johnny, and that is to patronise the Titans. Yeah, they stuck close in the first half. They looked all right for the first 40 to 45 minutes. But maybe we should just bag them for their inability to defuse any kick higher than shoulder height, let alone stay in the game when it got hot and heavy in the back end. The Chooks, on the other hand, well, they continued to roll, spearheaded by the stealth buyer of the season, Reece Robson, whom I strongly suspect will be wearing a nice shade of blue in the next fortnight.
Yep.
Cowboys versus Eels. Now we're into it, JC. But you can accuse this Eels team of plenty of things. Attacking inconsistency, defensive lapses, rendering my atrial fibrillation medication completely useless. But you cannot call them boring. A back-and-forth encounter in Townsville against an error-riddled Cowboys led to something that could only happen in a Parramatta encounter, a golden point game that they somehow won by 3. Is that a golden shower, JC? Dragons versus Knights. Greg Marju was the story here, scoring 5 of the Knights' 9 tries. But let's face it, most of the game looked like a training run for Newcastle, or at the very least an under-12 team playing in the under-10s. The Knights again showed that they are a fun and dangerous team, but the Saints. It's a bad sign when St George fans are wishing for the glory days of March.
Yeah, true. All right, let's move to Rabbitohs versus the Sharks. Geez, mate, no Latrell Mitchell. They unearthed another Latrell, and mate, pretty much no worries for South. I actually changed my tip from the Rabbitohs to the Sharks the moment I heard that Latrell Mitchell was out, and I reckon probably many punters probably did the same thing. Well, let me tell you, that didn't work. Mate, at one stage, the Rabbitohs were up 30-0. With Alex Johnson bagging another hat-trick. It was just like another sort of day in the office for him on that particular game. The Sharks were really disappointing, flat in attack, poor defensively, and they just never look in the contest. It's really hard to get a gauge on the Sharks where they are at the moment. They're just so inconsistent week to week. Moving to the Sea Eagles versus the Broncos. Mate, back to Fortress Brookvale for the Eagles and another win for Foz and the boys. That young Joey Walsh, mate, he looks like a real talent. I thought the kid played with plenty of confidence. Mate, scored a nice try and nailed an absolutely cracking 40-20. For the Broncos, look, we all know they've got a lot of injuries at the moment, but I tell you what, they still fielded a pretty strong team and still struggled. Heaps of errors, especially in that second half. Really let them down big time. And you know what? That's the result they got, to be honest. They just didn't turn up to be in that contest. Mm-hmm. Let's move to Storm versus the Tigers. And finally, Melbourne's big guns stood up, especially I thought Harry Grant was outstanding, Jerome Hughes. It's good that Bellamy and the team, they must be so relieved that they've finally snapped that 7-match losing streak. For the Tigers, look, I think they've hit a bit of a rough patch. I was sort of, expecting this to happen. The last 2 weeks, they've had 2 heavy back-to-back losses. And as we've discussed, many times this season, they've showed a lot of improvement this season. But I reckon the next few weeks is really going to be interesting to see how they respond. And obviously, if they can really steady that ship going forward. Moving to the Rabbitohs versus the Panthers. This was played at a really high standard from the opening whistle. I thought both sides were fantastic, especially in that first half. I think they actually both completed at 100% and both scored some cracking tries. But then, as so often happens, the Iceman, Nathan Cleary, just took control. that solo try pretty much wins Penrith the game. He's the difference, and then to sort of rub salt into the wound. Mate, did you see that unbelievable grubber from the short dropper that he pulled off to regain possession?
Mm.
Mate, this guy just has a ridiculous IQ. He's a freak, and rightly so. He's leading the Dally Ends at this time of the season.
Mate, it's a truism of football that you never change your tips within about 4 hours of the kickoff. You're the fourth person
Yeah,
I've heard
I
about
know.
that's actually changed their tip in the Rabbitohs
I know.
Sharks game, and every single one of them changed them to the Sharks and subsequently came up with a losing tip. Now, on to what caught our eye. What caught your eye?
Mate, you mentioned him before, Greg Marzhew from the Knights, that sort of bulky winger. Mate, what a performance! 5 tries. I know it was against the hapless Dragons, but Newcastle's wingers are absolutely flying this season. Between Dom Young and Marzu, they've combined for something like 24 tries this season, which now when you put them up against the best
Mm.
wing pairings in the competition, mate, they would have to be high at the top of the list. It actually got me thinking, when was the last time we saw a player jag 5 tries in a game? So I did a bit of digging. Josh Addo-Carr actually scored 6 for Melbourne back in 2021. And one of my old favourites from the James Tedesco and Friends organisation, Matt Ikuvalu. I remember that name. Mate, he bagged 5
Mm.
tries for sorry, won't say the word, the Bondi-based team back in 2020. So, yeah, it's been a while between drinks since somebody bagged 5 or more tries. But what caught your eye, Noz?
Mate, it wasn't Matt Ikuvalu. I don't know if Matt ever caught my eye, but funnily enough, it is another winger. Now, this is almost, mate, this is
Wow.
almost unprecedented, Johnny. We've got 2 wingers. Yeah, 2 wingers in what caught our eye this week. And I'm
Strange.
sure it was probably on the tip of your tongue as well, and that's Jermaine Asako. We've followed Asako's career now for the better part of a decade. He broke into first grade in 2017 for the Broncos, and he's often been the epitome of a no, yes player. But, mate, on Thursday night against the Dogs, he was just straight up yes. He not only
Yeah.
scored 3 spectacular tries, including the one that kickstarted the Finns' night, he set up one of the most extraordinary tries I've seen, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, and that was the one that he set up for Jack Bostock. Mate, that
Mm.
was an absolute peach. I don't think I've ever seen
Yeah.
anything like this before. Now, I know that our wingers have really become incredible with those spectacular leaps to plant the ball, but this took it to the next level. So he ran to that sideline. He hurled himself over the touch. And I was thinking to myself, what in God's name is he doing? But he was actually drawing the Canterbury defenders. So 2 Canterbury defenders followed him over the sideline. I don't know what they were thinking. And then, as easy as you like it, he just popped the ball over to Bostock, who scored without a Canterbury player anywhere within about 4 or 5 metres of him. Mate, it was absolutely fantastic. It was one of those things that
Mm.
really, again, widens your eyes and makes you sit up and pay attention. So I've often criticised Jermaine. There have been games where you've wondered exactly what he's doing, but he was fantastic on Thursday
Yeah.
night. Tip of the NRL offside hat to you, Jermaine. Well done, mate.
And no, don't forget his goal kicking. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a real feature of his play, particularly when he's been at the Dolphins. Okie dokes. Now on to the grapple, Johnny. Mate, it is Magic Round this week. So I mentioned in the introduction that the rugby league world is moving up to Brisbane for its annual Magic Round. It's the 7th staging. It's hard to believe that it's been going for that long. But what are your thoughts on Magic Round, mate?
Mate, I absolutely love it. I think it's a brilliant concept by the NRL. As we all know, it's a full marathon of rugby league, all at the one venue over a weekend. And to be honest, it doesn't get any better. Brisbane really gets behind it too. Suncorp is packed pretty much every game. It's become a pretty massive event on the NRL calendar for fans these days. And as we all know, commercially, it's a huge win for the city of Brisbane, pumping
Mm.
some serious cash into the local economy. I also think this concept could absolutely travel. I've always thought Auckland would be a great option, once they had the Auckland Nines. And obviously, Sydney could easily host it as well. I reckon it'd be a great spectacle over there at Allianz as well. And look, it's a great initiative by the NRL. Mate, I look forward to this week's games.
Like you a little bit earlier, where you did some digging and somewhat unsurprisingly came up with something to do with the R words. Mate, I did a little bit of research as well. And the original concept for Magic Round actually came from the English Super League. So they started it in '07 as Magic Weekend. Now, the term is terrible. It makes you conjure up these images of blokes with comb overs doing card tricks and waving handkerchiefs and feathers. But mate, it's really translated well. Thankfully, they changed the name to Magic Rounds, and the first one started in 2019. There was a hiatus in 2020 for COVID. But, mate, it just seems to be going from strength to strength every single year. And, mate, here's the thing. With a lot of promotional gimmicks, they sort of become stale after 3 or 4 years. Low the zone to say it, Vegas Round seems to be following that trajectory. We just seem to be getting diminishing returns every year because we've seen it. But Magic Round seems to be the complete opposite. Somehow it seems to be getting stronger. It's an organic event. It's really built around football. It makes perfect sense. You mentioned Brisbane. Brisbane's a big ingredient of its overall success, but it's really embraced by the Queenslanders. It looks like it's a fantastic weekend and everyone has a great time. The other thing, which is one of the little secrets of Magic Round, is it comes at the right time of the season. We're now 11 rounds in. The season sort of settles into a bit of a dull roar. We're just moving from round to round, and Magic Rounds shakes it up a little bit. It gives us something to look forward to, puts a different spin on what we're doing with the competition. And the final thing, and I mentioned this at the start, is the focus is well and truly on the footballs. It's not about promotional gimmicks. It's not about things outside the game. Everybody just goes there to watch 8 really bang-up games of rugby league. Now, I do have a slight gripe, Johnny. I might feel a little bit like the Grinch doing this, but 3 of the 4 Queensland teams, including Brisbane and the Dolphins, who actually play at Suncorp, have an official away game. Now, that gives them an advantage in the cutthroat world of the NRL. But yeah, I mean, as you said, who really cares about that? The most important aspect of Magic Round is it's great fun. Every time I watch it, it reminds us that we love this game because it's enjoyable, because it makes us smile, because we go out there and have a good time with people who are like-minded. So Magic Rounds, well done to the NRL. I think it's a tremendous initiative. Mate, long may it continue. I hope we're still having this conversation in 20 years' time.
Hey, Noz, just also add to Magic Round, I think the other great initiative in the last few years is that it actually kicks off with the Women's State of Origin as well, which will be played
Yeah,
on Thursday night. So I think that's a really good intro into then obviously the men's NRL weekend games as well.
but I agree. It makes a nice little double act. Mate, let's have a look at the upcoming rounds. What do you got for us?
Okay, let's start with the Sharks versus the Bulldogs. Mate, I'm calling this the inconsistent Sharks up against the, I think it's fair to say, out of form Bulldogs. Look, both coaches have every right to be fuming at the moment, and I reckon that Serrato is probably feeling a little bit more of the heat. Mate, the Dogs just completely look out of sync at the moment, both defensively and obviously we know in attack as well. I'm just not too sure who to even tip in this one, to be honest. It's a bit of a toss of the coin, mate. I'll go with the Sharks, but not with much confidence, to be honest.
Mate, my old man has a great take on the Sharks over the last 4 or 5 years in the Fitzgibbon era, and he has them as his median team. That is, they beat everybody below the median, and they get beaten by everybody above the median.
I
However,
love it.
mate, with their wild mate, with their it's good, isn't it? With their wild inconsistency this year over the first 11 rounds, mate, I don't even think they're that. I don't know what this Sharks team is. On the other side of the equation, mate, the Dogs are consistent. They're consistently bad. And I'm going with the Sharks a little bit like you. I'm not particularly confident, and my tip's more reflecting the Dogs' form, mate. They've just been atrocious in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep, sure have. Let's move to the Rabbitohs versus the Dolphins. This should be an absolutely cracking game. I think it's probably two of the best attacking sides in the comp right now, maybe along with the Cowboys. Both these teams can score from absolutely anywhere on the field. Tell you what, the Dolphins have been the much improved side over the last month. Their attack is flowing
Mm.
as it generally does, but their forwards are now starting to play quite strong. And look, when these guys get momentum, mate, they are seriously dangerous. The big question is, I mentioned it before, does Latrell Mitchell play? Because he obviously changes everything for the Rabbitohs. But look, I'm leaning towards the Finns in this game, and I think it's going to be a pretty high shootout. And Herbie Farnworth to get man of the match.
Mate, you love your Herbie. Mate, I thought South were as impressive as they have been for the entire season, even without Latrell, who is arguably the best player in the competition at the moment. Mate, they regained that focus that they haven't had. I think the big thing for the Dolphins in this game is they need to watch their starts. Their poor starts have really cost them in certain games. If they do it in this one, it might get away from them because Souths have a lot of firepower. They can put points on them quickly, and the Dolphins might not be able to come back. For that very reason, I'm going for the Rabbitohs in this one, mate.
Okay, let's move to the Tigers versus the Seagulls. Look, the struggling Tigers up against top eight Manly, and I tell you what, how quickly things change in a month or so in the NRL. Look, the Tigers really need to tighten up
Mhm.
defensively. At the moment, they're definitely leaking a few points as we've seen from the past few weeks. On the other hand, mate, Manly are mate, they're firing on all cylinders. Strong in attack, discipline in defence. And, mate, they're looking like a very complete football side under Kieran Foran. For mine, I just think Manly will be too strong across the entire 80 minutes.
Mate, Tigers month looks like it's well and truly over. They've gone back to being their usual joke team. But I'm just saying that for the benefit of your friend who thinks that I'm a Tigers hater, giving him a little bit more fuel for that.
Uh,
Mate, they do have an
yeah,
injury list, but I mean, mate, welcome to the NRL. Two-thirds of the
yeah.
competition has an injury list at this particular point of the season. It's just something that you have to deal with. Mate, consecutive hidings from not very good opponents, that's a terrible sign, particularly when they're going into Magic Round and facing a good opponent. I think Manly's actually going to dish them up in this one.
All right, let's move to James Tedesco and friends versus the Cowboys. That Cowboys game last week against the Eels was an absolute beauty. As we saw, the Cows can score tries from absolutely anywhere, led by the drink water. And I love that silky guy that glides when he runs Purdue. Look, they can also be a little bit like a roller coaster with their risky play at times.
Mhm.
And as you know, points can come quickly from both ends. Um, I'm thinking if James Tedesco and friends can get through, I reckon about 60 minutes without too many lapses. I just think they'll be too far ahead and they should get the job done comfortably. Tommy Dearden being out, mate, that's a massive loss for the Cows. It's actually also a pretty big loss for the Maroons. So, yeah, I'm tipping Tedesco and friends to get this one.
I think the Cowboys are probably the team getting the biggest advantage out of Magic Round. They don't have to go down to Allianz. Allianz is proving an absolute graveyard for opposition teams this year. So, mate, I think they're going to get a little bit of a boost from not having to sort of travel south of the border and head to Moore Park. In terms of North Queensland, mate, it's all about errors. If they can cut out their errors, they can compete. Mate, if they fumble the pill as much as they did against the Eels, the Chooks will absolutely lap them. Now, you'll like this one, JC. I'm going for the boys in a boil over. But again, this is actually part of your recovery, mate. I'm doing it for you. I'm willing to put myself out on a limb to aid in your recovery from this, JC.
Oh, mate. All right, let's go to your Eels versus the Storm. That was a great comeback by the Eels last week. They never gave up, even though at times I thought they were going to be beaten. Now the big question is whether, mate, you can back up again against the Storm this weekend. I actually think Melbourne's win over the weekend might just be what sparks them back into gear. And hopefully Melbourne's fullback is back on deck because he makes a massive difference to their attacking play. I'm going for Melbourne to go back to back this weekend.
I've got a little bit of a confession here, Johnny. I mentioned I love Magic Round. I think Magic Round is a phenomenal experience. But I also, a little part of me wishes that Parramatta had to buy every Magic round because we've been awful in Magic round since its inception. A few of those games have been against the Storm where they've put 40 and 50 points on us. The other thing about Parramatta is they haven't been great back-to-back. They've given us dud performances off the backs of good ones. They really haven't shown any consistency at all. I think Melbourne's performance against the Tigers was a bit of a false dawn. This is not a Storm team which is as dominant as they have been over the last quarter century. They also don't have Queensland as a home away from home as they usually do. I'm going for a bit of a swashbuckling tip here, JC. I'm apologising to my mate Paddy Bell. He says that whenever I tip Parramatta, they lose. Whenever I don't tip them, they win. So sorry, mate, but I am going for the mighty Eels in this one, mate.
Wow, that's two boilovers already this round. Okay, let's move to the
Absolutely.
Titans versus the Knights. You mentioned it before. I thought the Titans were quite gallant in their effort against the Bondi-based outfit, especially after getting a few, I thought, pretty dud bunker calls go against them, to be honest. I thought those two tries by the Roosters were a little bit controversial. And I thought their young halfback showed he's got some signs of the future as well. I thought he went quite well. Look, for the Knights, they come into this game with back-to-back wins. Obviously, they got a few of their big boys back. I thought Kalen Pong has been very strong. Look, I'm leaning towards the Knights, and I wouldn't be surprised if both Knights wingers, mate, find their way over the try line and probably grab 1, 2, 3 each. So, yeah, I'm going for Newcastle up in Magic Round.
And don't forget, Johnny, the Titans can't catch bombs. They were terrible. I know the Roosters are actually pretty good. Oh, sorry, the R words are pretty good with the high ball. But, mate, someone should get in Keanu Kinney's ear. He's a little bit like KO Weeks in Canberra, but he needs to realise that playing fullback is a little more than running around like a good sort. You have to defend. You have to defuse bombs. I think that. Mate, I think the Titans are nowhere. They seem to be happy if they play 15 to 20 strong minutes. The Knights, on the other hand, they're building nicely. They were good on the weekend. I think the Knights, and it's going to be quite a comfortable victory for them.
All right, let's go to Panthers versus the Dragons. This one worries me, mainly when you start thinking about what the scoreline might end up looking like at the end of this game. Mate, unfortunately, we've all been saying it, and I do feel sorry for them, but the Dragons roster just isn't quite at first grade standard across the board at this point in time. Mate, against one of the heavyweight sides like Penrith, it could get pretty ugly pretty quickly. I wrote down in my notes 50 plus. Look, hopefully not for Dean Young's sake, or mate, he'll become Dean old, not young, by season's end if these hammerings continue. So, and that's if he survives. Look, Penrith by plenty, but I just hope it doesn't get too ugly.
Hey, Penrith, let's just move on.
Yeah, pretty quick, mate. All right, what do we got? We got the game of the round. All right, let's move to the Warriors versus the Broncos. Look, the Warriors generally have a lot of support in Brisbane, and obviously, the Broncos will as well. It's their home ground. On form, you probably have to lean towards the Warriors. They've definitely been far more consistent, more structured across the season to date. But look, it's Magic Round. It is being played in Brisbane. Mate, I'm going for an upset here. I reckon the Broncos are going to get it done, but it's definitely going to be a tight one. So go the Bronx.
Yeah, mate, I sort of agree with you. Brisbane are in a mini slump at the moment. Madge Maguire was right to be furious with their form over the past fortnight. Yeah, they're undermanned, but as we said with the Tigers, at this particular point of the season, the injuries are starting to creep in and the other blokes need to step up and to really show some resolve. And in the wash-up, they've actually been towelled up over the last 2 weeks against quality opponents. The reason I'm going for Brisbane in this game is just the Madge Maguire factor. I think he's really going to be getting into those Broncos forwards in particular. Yeah, they're undermanned, but defence is often a state of mind. The interesting thing is going to be which Warriors team turns up. So we've talked about the fact that Andrew Webster has done a great job in regards to sort of changing the mindset of the New Zealand team. I think it's going to be the most interesting game of the weekend. That's why it is the game of the round. But it's going to be the Broncos for mine because this is where Maguire teams really start to turn things around. Now, mate, we are on to free balling. It's my free balling this week. I mentioned the fact that it's going to be a little bit left of centre. The catalyst for this was Latrell Mitchell's current rich vein of form. He has been incredible. We've talked about it week in, week out over the first 10 rounds of the season, but Latrell is just as likely to turn up in the next 3 games and make you scratch your head. Mate, he is one of the preeminent all-time no footballers. That is a mercurial player that you just don't know what you're going to get out of week after week. Now, I also mentioned that I'm going to be a little bit left of centre here, JC. Mate, are you an iced tea fan? Not the beverage, the hip hop star?
Mm, yeah, a little bit, not huge.
Yeah, a little bit. That's the most uninspiring thumbs up I've ever seen. But mate, I'm a huge iced tea fan, and in the wake of my Sir Mix-a-Lot figurine last week, mate, I've got another prop here, and it is. I'm just put it up for the crowd, mate. It is the single High
Wow.
Rollers from his 1987 classic LP Power. And I'll link them in the show notes just so people can get their fix of timeless 1980s hip hop. Now, one of the lyrics from High Rollers encapsulates this mercurial mentality. Are you ready for this, JC? It's like jumping rope on a razor blade or lightning quick decisions are made. I love that particular lyric. But, mate, if you think about it in a rugby league context, maybe not too many people have ever thought about it in a rugby league context, but, mate, the
No.
great ones going back to the great ones going back to Dally Messenger through Dave Brown, Reg Gasnier, Graham Langlands, Wally Lewis and Andrew Johns, mate, they've all had an element of this. The best example, and mate, I know you would well and truly concur with this, is Andrew Johns scooting down the blindside to set up Darren Albert's game-winning try in the 97 grand final. Mate, it is still the single most audacious bit of football that we have and probably ever will see. But mate, even with that group, Immortals all, they've had their fair share of moments where they've just slipped off the razor blade and had absolute shockers. And that's just the nature of being one of those type of players. But, mate, the all-time exemplar for mercurial footballers is Pew Aubert. Now, there is a little bit of a background to this, JC. He's a bit of a Mitchell family legend. My grandfather, the late, great Malcolm Mitchell, mate, he absolutely loved Pew Aubert. He wasn't a huge footy fan. In fact, you could probably say my nan was a much bigger Souths fan than my pop. But, mate, he just loved to talk about Aubert. Who was the great French fullback who mesmerised the Australian public on the 1951 tour of Australia and New Zealand. Now, his story is it's hard to believe, and I've actually taken this directly from Aubert's Wikipedia page. So I'm reading directly from the source of all truth. So here we go. So Aubert was actually born Robert Aubert Pugh, but when he signed as a teenager for Carcassonne, there were several other established players that shared the same surname. So a local newspaper editor printed his name back to front to avoid confusion, and he ended up sticking and becoming the most famous of them all. Now, unsurprisingly, in Wikipedia, there was a bracket which said citation needed, so that could well be made up, but geez, it's a great story, turning your name opposite way. Now, back to Wikipedia. It gets great here, Johnny. His nickname, Pipette, was a reference to his smoking habits, which at several stages saw him smoking on the field. Quite famously, in a game against Wigan, which was played in a snowstorm, he actually caught the ball with one hand while holding a cigarette in the other hand. While he often had unusual habits for a sportsman, there was no denying his talent. He was a master at kicking in play, and in overall attack, he was both unorthodox and unpredictable. Aside from his playing skill, he developed a reputation based on his somewhat eccentric attitude or charismatic manner. He was known to not tackle a player if he believed it would demonstrate the fault of his teammates for not previously making the tackle, a cause of some
Love it.
controversy during his career. Now, mate, when I read that, I actually thought to myself, times have obviously changed with that particular tactic. It doesn't seem to be working for the 2026 Dragons. Now, bringing it back to a more modern frame, mate, in our lifetime, there has been 2 standouts when it comes to being mercurial, Dale Shearer and Cam Munster. Now, they've both been Queenslanders. Coincidence? I think not. Mate, Shearer's career was probably the perfect encapsulation of this. He was a premiership winner at Manly in 87, played multiple origin games for Queensland. He donned the green and gold of Australia. Mate, if you go and watch Dale Shearer highlights, there's currently a supercut of all of his Queensland origin tries on NRL.com. You would absolutely swear mate, you'd put your hand on a stack of Bibles and swear that he was the greatest winger in the history of football. I mean, backing up, swooping on the ball, running around running away like a greyhound to score under the posts. But, mate, for those of us that lived the Dale Shearer experience, he certainly wasn't. He also combined that with just the most confusing and ridiculous things on the field. He'd run out on the full on the second tackle. He'd miss tackles. He'd take wrong options. He'd sort of had those injuries where he'd lay on the field and act like he'd just been shot. Mate, there were some Origin games, and you can probably remember this clearly, where everyone watching would swear that Wally Lewis would have actually strangled him by the full-time whistle. He also had that rare honour of playing for the Queensland Dudfecta. So he represented the Gold Coast Seagulls, the South Queensland Crushers, and the late 90s Cowboys, mate. That's a feat which will never be repeated. Now on to
Wow.
Munster. Again, more of a contemporary player. Mate, everybody loves Cam. I despise the Melbourne Storm, and even I have a soft spot for Munster. Mate, he has a very storied lineage in the game as well. He's a dual premiership winner. He's an Origin star. He's been the Australian 5'8" now for about 4 or 5 years. But he also has the honour of being the only person to have ever been sin-binned twice in a grand final.
Yeah.
And his overall performance in that game, which is the 2018 grand final, probably one that you remember fondly. Mate, it's probably the worst grand final performance we've ever seen, with the only other competition, funnily enough, being Graham Langland's in the 75 grand final, again against East, the famous white boots performance. Now, mate, in terms of mercurial players, I really hope that this element never goes away. The game's now all about process and percentages and field positions. But, mate, those mercurial players in our game's history, they've often made it worth watching. They've made it what it should be, which is great fun. So, mate, long live the no, yes players. Who's your favourite, Johnny?
The two players that really come to mind for me, Reece Walsh and Sean Johnson. I'll start with Reece Walsh. Look, on his day, and I think we all agree, he's probably the most electric, game-breaking player we've ever seen. His speed off the mark, that trademark skip, the way he throws his body on the line to stop try, it's quite incredible. And I think, as we all know, we all saw it in last year's grand final. Mate, at times he can almost single-handedly, drag his teams to victory. But then, mate, in the very next moment, he'll produce a play where you'll go, what the hell did he just do? So, yeah, Reece Lightning, he's definitely I call him the ultimate rocks and diamonds player. The other one is Sean Johnson. Look, early in his career, mate, I love this guy. I thought he was the next Benji Marshall. He was a freak. He was all diamonds. Pure brilliance. Then there was that middle period of his career where he probably threw a lot more rocks, and he never quite reached the heights that probably everyone expected, especially when he went to the Sharks. But then when he returned to the Warriors at the back end of his career, we saw this rejuvenated Sean Johnson playing some unbelievable football again. And he probably should have won the Dally M for that particular season when he was clearly the best player that year. But look, Sean Johnson was definitely one of those players in the, oh, fuck, what's he going to do sort of category. But yeah, they're my two picks.
Yeah, mate, they're rippers. Now, we have come to the end of the show, JC, and mate, I'm very proud of you. You've done very, very well. You haven't gone off on your usual Roosters tangents. We haven't had to listen to your red, white, and blue diatribe. So, mate, the recovery's begun. I'm really, really pushing for you here. Now, we are going to finish with Vox Popping. We introduced this segment last week. It's our quick weekly feedback from our listeners. Now, mate, I got the first one. It's from Tessie Tuolahi, my equal 12th favourite Tongan. When I asked Tessie if I should use the golden shower quote in my speed round recap of the Cowboys-Eels game, he said, absolutely. Now, I might come to regret that, especially when my mother listens to it, but I'd like to give a big shout out to my mate Tessie. And, mate, you had one from your sister-in-law. What was it?
Yeah, I'm taking this as a compliment. She said to me that the show seems much more professional the last few episodes. So, mate, it feels like we've moved from amateurs and we're heading in the right direction. So let's give each other a little one of these. But yeah, look,
Yeah.
I love all the feedback. I've got a feeling after your comments today about the Tigers, my Tigers mate from the gym is going to mention something. So I'll share that next week. All right. Well, mate, we've come to the end of the show, mate. We'd love all of our listeners to keep subscribing. Make sure you're sending through all your feedback. We really appreciate that. If you want to send any thoughts, we've actually got a new Gmail account. So it's nrloffside@gmail.com. And yeah, that's the end of the show today. Really loved chatting with you and look forward to next week, guys. Stay well.